What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another hype versus reality for you guys today. And what I'll be talking about today is this guy. That's right, folks. This is the Chaves. That's Ramon Chaves. And this is his collaboration with Reate to make a production model of his, I think his custom was the Redencion 228, and the name of this model is the Redencion 229. This is the production version of that 228, from my understanding, and these are produced by Reate, like I said before, to give you guys a better price point for those of you that wanted to handle a Ramon Chaves but can't afford his custom knives. So in saying that, like I said before, this is a hype versus reality. I know a lot of guys are probably waiting for this hype versus reality to come. Let me get some of that schmutz off. Yeah, that's right, guys. This is a Shadowborn hanky. If you guys don't know who JD is, go check him out on Instagram. But he makes some really nice quality hanks. Well, that's actually some schmutz there, probably some adhesive residue. So yeah, getting right into it, guys. Like I said, it's a hype versus reality. So and I'll be doing it in that fashion, which will entail a size comparison, size specs. I'll be doing some footage of me using the knife. I'll go over the hype, which will be, whether it be, from the retailers, from the manufacturers, from the community, from blade forums, whatever it may be. There's a lot of hype that gets created on these knives, whether it be positive or negative. And I will kind of touch on the hype, and then I'll talk about the reality of when I, got the knife, used it, sharpened it. Did it live up to that hype? So, saying that, I'm going to get right into it. Bear with me here. I am going to touch the camera for a second. I try to get it as square on top of it as I possibly can. That looks okay. So, yeah, moving right into it. I am going to go ahead and put the specs on the page right here. I don't like to waste your guys' time and spew off a bunch of numbers, so I do it in this fashion. And bring you guys back, and we'll go ahead and do some size comparisons. Let me go ahead. I usually go by the pivot, so you can see how much handle and blade, and we'll go right into some size comparisons. I'll bring in the Chaves. This is the Redencion Street, the original Reate production knife they made, and you can see that the Redencion 229 is definitely a much larger knife than the Street. And we'll go ahead and bring in some others. I'll go ahead and bring in the ProTech. This is the ProTech / Ferrum Forge. This is the Mordax 2.0, manufactured by ProTech. These are very, very similar size knives. And I'll bring in, this is the Medford Slim Midi Marauder. And you can see this is a slightly shorter knife, definitely smaller in the thickness dimension as well. This definitely comes closer, although I will say that the Redencion is a much heavier duty knife, heavier scales, thicker scales. I'll get more into that later. I'll bring in some Spydercos. Here's the Spidey Chef. It's a very similar size knife, although again not nearly as thick. Here's a Para 3, probably gonna dwarf that little Para 3 there. And then I'll go ahead and bring in a few more. Actually, let me just bring in this Hinder, very good size comparison. And then below it, I'm gonna bring in some Benchmades real quick. We got the Bug Out, of course, that's a much smaller knife. And then something that's going to be a little bit more of a comparison here, which is the Super Freak, which is actually slightly longer in overall length, although I think as far as what you're getting functional knife-wise, I think you got a really good comparison there. Although the Super Freak's definitely going to be lighter for your EDC needs. And I want to keep this hinder on here because this is a very good size comparison. And if you're thinking of like the beefiness and overall like overbuilt stature of the hinder, this is the full size XM18 3.5. This is the Sponto. And yes, this is a very good size comparison as far as length and weight and everything. Although the Redencion is still heavier than the hinder, and you can definitely feel that. Although I will say in most dimensions, you're looking at a very similar size knife. But again, you've got two thick full titanium slabs as your scales here. You got some G10 here, so it's definitely gonna take some of the weight out of it. Also, I think that's pretty much most of the difference there. But we are going to go ahead and get right into this. And first things first, I want to talk about the height. There is some, a good bit of hype on these knives at this point. When I first snagged one on the pre-order, or actually like when Ramon originally dropped it on his site, I went ahead and grabbed one. Some of the hype came from the fact that I have this knife. I had another Redencion Street as well that I absolutely love. I love this knife. I love the other one. I really did enjoy this knife right off the bat. So as soon as I saw they were coming out with a larger version in M390 done by Reate, I was like, yeah, I definitely wanted everything to do with that. Although some of the largeness of this knife, I wasn't necessarily, like, that's not why I wanted to jump on it, because I do like the size of the Redencion Street. So it wasn't like I needed the bigger knife, but I was really intrigued by it. I did like the idea of the full titanium. I like the idea of M390 because I hadn't tried Reate's M390, and I heard they do a pretty good job with it. So I was eager to do that. As far as Ramon Chaves goes, I've spoke about him before in this video. He is a custom maker out of New Mexico, and he seems to do a really good job with his build quality and everything. He usually makes a kind of an overbuilt knife. They're usually really thick and heavy and very thick steel as far as stock thickness. They go usually pretty thick with the stock thickness, and then he uses a hollow grind to get a very thin behind the edge dimension. So I really appreciated that, and I was really into trying some of his other knives. Although I'd love to try one of his customs, it is hard to get one of his customs. You kind of got to be in the right spot at the right time, or pick it up secondhand, and they usually jack the price up on those. I am going to have a video kind of coming up talking about custom makers and what I think, how I think they're kind of dropping the ball these days, just not giving people the option of ordering an actual custom knife. So I'll talk about that in a later time on another video. But as far as the hype is concerned, this got a lot of hype as far as just being one of Ramon's knives. Also, so a lot of the hype comes from Ramon Chaves' custom knives. A lot of the hype comes from his street line, which got a lot of really good reviews. A lot of people love this knife. I did get some negative stuff. And then, of course, there's the little bit of negative hype surrounding, like, the clips. Because I know a lot of guys don't necessarily like the, big kind of, I don't want to call it gaudy, but, it's definitely bold style clip. So I know there's a lot of guys that don't necessarily love that. So that's some of the negative hype. I saw a little bit of hype about the clip, like where this meets here. I heard this was a sharp point on some of the knives. Also, there was a little bit of negative hype that I created because of the plunge grind and where that was terminated on the Redencion Street model. We've got positive hype as far as the blade grind goes, really nice blade grinds. M390 steel, of course, the hype is always present with that steel in this community. This is a bearing thumb stud knife, which has a bit of hype with that as well. As far as this does have ceramic bearings and ceramic detent ball, so a little bit of hype with that as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype with this knife. I'm not gonna go into it much more. I don't want to waste a lot of time here, but as far as most of the hype is concerned, it's regarding like Chaves as a maker and also Reate as a manufacturer. So really into getting this knife, and when I got it, I'm go right into the Reality, guys. I was pretty impressed with this knife. I did do an unboxing, so I think everyone saw what I thought of this knife at first. I'll go over the fit and finish first. And as far as finish goes, this titanium is done very well. It has some type of bead blast done to it. And then it's just pretty much that plain titanium. And I don't mind that. It is a little bland, so if you're kind of more of a colors guy, it's definitely not the boldest option. But you can always have these anodized by an aftermarket company, or me. I'll probably be anodizing this eventually, doing some kind of stonewash anodizing to the clip and the backspacer. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, combination-wise. And then, yeah, of course, the blade could use some type of etching and all that. Although the grind lines, you guys will see, this is done extremely well as far as finish is concerned. It is like, the grind lines are like a belt grind. They did have an option for a hand rubbed finish. I believe these were, when I bought it, it was $350, I believe, for this version, and then $375 for the version with the, or maybe it's $325, $350. I know it's like $25 more for the hand rubbed version, which I wasn't really like, I didn't really care. I'm fine with the grind lines. I don't mind it at all. I actually like it. You know, it gives it some dimension as far as where your combo grind meets, where that termination is. Sorry about the sound in the back, guys. It's the trash truck. But yeah, so the finish on the blade is done extremely well. As far as the chamfering on the knife, everything is chamfered very well, and all the lines are terminated. Everything's super crisp as far as the way everything's terminated. Nothing. The hardware is really nice on these guys. The hardware is really nice on these as well. Definitely above and beyond on the hardware. Kind of has a jeweled look to it. Very crisp lines on the hardware. Very deep pockets for the Torx bits. And I believe that it's number 8 on all the screws, which is nice. I believe even the clip screw, which you have to get through from this side, which is the one thing I could say, you know, might be a negative thing for some people, is you have to take this scale off in order to get to the clip. But I like it because it's hidden screws. You don't really see them. It's kind of a nice touch. These screws do go through and screw into the titanium here, as you can see, which means it's nice for not having a Chicago screw that you have to worry about falling out or anything. But the downside is, if you take your knives apart a lot, you could eventually wear that thread out, and it's in the titanium, so they'd have to do something to fix that if you did damage it. Very small thing, in my opinion. So you guys see, this thumb stud is much larger than the Redencion Street, so that's something to keep in mind. Of course, the stock thickness. Actually, these are very similar stock thicknesses. If it is more, it's just ever so slightly more. I think they're actually the exact same stock thickness. So you're not getting much more stock thickness out of this knife. It's just much more, it's just a slightly longer blade. And it's actually more so broad than even in the length. Like, you've got Let me go ahead and show you real quick. You've got about a 1/4 inch extra length, but as far as the width of the blade, got about an extra, you know, eighth, maybe 3/16 of an inch as far as width of the blade. And I'll get more into why that's a nice factor later. As far as fit, you know, everything's fit very nice, very centered. This thing was very nice out of box. Everything was as you would expect. This backspacer doesn't fit amazingly, and the reason for that is there's not, I believe actually on this one there is a, there's not like a locating screw or a locating pin that kind of keeps it in place. So this backspacer does move, and you can see right there it's a little low there and a little high here. Although I do believe that this one had a locating pin, it just wasn't like the tightest, amazing fitment of it. But as far as that's concerned, it's not something, oops, sorry guys. It's not something that bothers me too much. And you can easily just loosen these screws, push it back in place and tighten it back down, and it'll get it nice and flush. But something you kind of got to play with. As far as action goes, the detent on this knife is extremely strong. So it flies out, guys. You guys can see that. It absolutely flies out. And but you can lock yourself out as well if you're pushing very hard on that lock bar. It's a very strong detent. And as far as Spidey flicking it, it's, you know, you can do it, but it is very, like at first this was very tight, and even just doing this, trying to get my nail behind it, kind of hurts my nail. So I tend to just push it, let it, see, I'm kind of locking myself out right now, but I just push it and let it break the detent, and once it breaks, it usually flies out. You guys can see there, but it's not like the easiest thing on your fingers, and it's not something I sat there and Spidey flicked this thing many times. I really just would do it every now and then, but thumb stud wise, it does work very well. You can roll it out if you kind of keep your fingers off the lock bar and just push it out real slowly. Use the pad of your finger here and just kind of break it loose first. That works very well. And the last thing on the fitment, actually, I didn't speak of, was this. You guys know I actually modified this to be further out, but you can still see that it kind of, you know, it's going to get a little bigger back there, the back of the choil, or the, right here, right where the sharpening choil is. And this, I had to move out probably a good, I mean, I did a good 1/16 of an inch, if not more. So that was a very big smile at the beard of this. And on this one came out of box like that. So that's one thing they, you know, they're paying attention. People were complaining about that, and I'm sure Ramon was like, that's not acceptable. So they fixed that issue on these. And as you can see, I did it on that one myself because it was necessary. This isn't really a finger choil. It's more just a sharpening choil. But you could put your finger, like just the tip right there, if you wanted to. Just the tip, right? Yeah, so that's one thing to keep in mind. It does have a little bit more space there now. But it gave me plenty of room when sharpening to get all the way back and not have much of a smile. So that's a nice touch. As far as the action, like I said, it's really nice going back into the action. Very, very snappy. The closing action, you guys can see it drops down very nicely. It's not as like drop shutty as this one. This one gets past that detent ramp and just, whew. I mean, I don't even have to shake it. It's just a really free dropping. This one just has that slight bit of, just a little bit of resistance, and it's actually not a bad thing. I really do, especially with such a big blade. It's not a bad thing that you have to kind of shake it in. It does have the detent ramp, as you guys can see. That's where it meets the tang right there, the detent ball. And then if you just kind of see, push it right over. There is a detent ramp, which Pretty much all Reates, I believe, have detent ramps. So it's a nice touch, and it really is very, very smooth action. Very smooth. And here's the detent. You guys can see it sucks it in very nicely. There you go. So that's really nice, guys, and I wouldn't have expected much less coming from, you know, this knife. And my other one too was just smoking action and amazing detent. So not surprised by the action on this guy, and you know, Reate just seems to nail their action and fit and finish as well. One thing to keep in mind, or I should say one thing to note that I did notice right away, after I took this, because when I first got this, I took it apart, cleaned it, just kind of what I sometimes like to do with the knives, just to see how they were done. Kind of wanted to see if they had a locating pin on these now. I think there was a small one, but it still left a little bit of play. I can't remember. I think there is a locating pin though, but it's just like one pin, I think. But yeah, as far as the fit goes, I did take this apart, put it back together, and when I did, there was the slightest bit of movement where the stop pin meets the tang of the knife, and then the where the detent ball's in, you could actually feel the slightest bit of movement. And what I did is I took it apart, I just turned the stop pin a little bit, moved it once, tightened it back down, and that movement was gone. So it was probably my doing, but it was something that I noticed right away. So I just wanted to make sure you guys, you know, I told you about that. But it was fixed right away, so no big issue with that. As far as the clip, well, I'll actually go more into that later. I want to talk about the performance of this knife, guys. And as far as performance goes, I'll go ahead and put on some footage right now of me using the knife. I was blown away by this knife, guys, as far as performance goes. The blade is ground just excellently. It really is. And, I mean, to be even like the same kind of grind as my Redencion Street, but yet it's even thinner because of the broadness of the blade. It comes even thinner behind the edge at the secondary bevel, and it just is amazing, guys. The way this thing slices for the amount of blade stock thickness it has is excellent. And as far as, you know, the blade steel goes, this is M390, which we know, guys, you know, M390, depending on how it's treated, it could be amazing or it could just be, you know, okay. So what we see a lot of from production companies is just okay. And we've been seeing it more and more. Hopefully some of these companies are starting to pay attention a little more, and we're starting to get some better stuff. We are seeing the difference though in the actual performance, guys. We know that a point difference in M390 can make a huge difference. In saying that, I believe Reate's M390 in this case is supposed to be between 60 and 61, which is, it's acceptable, guys. That is more than acceptable. I think 60 to 61 is kind of where M390 really starts to set itself apart. Of course, we want to see 62 would be even better. It actually might be 60 to 62 might be their range. I'll actually, I'll correct myself now if I find something different. But yeah, to see it at 62 would be amazing, because at 62 is really where it just takes off. 60 to 61, you definitely see it start to pull away, and it starts to really, really seem like it's something else, like it's on another level than the other steels. Otherwise, under 60, guys, M390 is almost going to perform like S35, S30, CTS XHP. It's really going to be performing more in that type of sense. And then from there, like going up into 60 to 61, it really starts to show. It starts to shine up there. So in saying that, this M390 did feel really good, and it did seem to perform much better than most of the M390 I've had come through the channel. So I'm really looking forward to see how this does. I would definitely put it on par with some of the better M390 I've gotten recently, like the Hinder M390 that I've gotten to use now, and some of the other 20 CVs and M390s, like the for instance, like the Shirogorov L Max. You know, that's definitely on a whole nother level. Which this feels like similar in a sense. Still maybe not on the level of the L Max from Shirogorov, but definitely better than most of the M390 I've used at this point. So I was really, really excited to use this. As far as blade steel and geometry, they really did nail it here. And in use, it just was a breeze. Also, ergonomically, this knife really is so comfortable to use. I'll get more into the ergonomics when I bring you back, but I do want to briefly talk about it here because with the thickness of this knife, with the width and the broadness of the handle, it really does fit the hand very comfortably. And I love the clip as far as ergonomics go. It really is broad, and there's no like sharp points or hot spots that I feel on the clip. So yeah, just ergonomically, this knife really does, fit amazingly in the hand. And then accompany that with a great geometry and a sharp edge, and this thing is just a breeze and just a pleasure to use. So yeah, I really enjoyed using it. Really enjoyed the M390. Look forward to seeing how it does in the testing with Gerald, and then of course with Kurt. I'll probably be sending it over to them, and we'll see how it does as far as what the HRC is and how it performs in the cut test. But I have pretty high hopes for it right now. I think it's going to do very well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. And really, really just, I just love this thing so far. So I'm looking forward to all of it, including like just keeping this knife for a really long time. So in saying that, I will be bringing you guys back. I'll talk more about the geometry and everything like that. As far as the geometry goes, I am going to bring in some calipers right now, and we'll go ahead and see what the thickness behind the edge is. I didn't talk about the sharpening, guys. This thing did sharpen really well. It came up super sticky. It felt pretty glassy on the stone, so I have a feeling it's going to be at a higher HRC. But it took a smoking edge and came up really, really, really sharp. So yeah, 15 thousandths right there, guys. Really nice. This is at 15 degrees per side. Right there we got 14 thousandths. Again, right around 14 thousandths. Of course, right at the combination grind, it's going to start getting thicker. At about 18 thousandths right there. About 25. 23 thousandths right there. Probably really similar at the tip. Yeah, 22, 23 thousandths. So really, really nice edge, guys. And even compared to like this one, it's even thinner. This one's now been sharpened a few times, but yeah, this one's right. Actually, this one's 13 thousandths at this point. Yeah. They're both really, really thin. I'm blown away by both these knives as far as cutting ability. So it's about 13,000. So actually this one is slightly thicker, but man, did it not really show in use, because this one's about 13 thousandths too, actually, now that I get it a little closer. So they're right around the same thickness at 15 degrees per side. So that's super, super nice, guys. And these things slice very, very well. So, yeah, so it did sharpen extremely well. Going back to that, it was extremely nice to sharpen. And it did take a little bit longer on the stone, so curious to see what it's at. All right, so we got about 156 thousandths, 156 and a half thousandths. If you did this on mode, you're looking at about, 4 millimeter, I think is what they call this blade stock thickness, which I believe that is, 4 millimeter. So they're both at 4 millimeter blade stock, and just really, really nice thickness behind the edge, considering that thick of a blade stock. Go ahead and bring in the scale here, because this is where this knife really, if this is where it's going to tell you whether you can carry it or not. 6.49 ounces, guys. It is not a light knife. The Redencion Street is right around 4.79. This is the version with the G10, so it's a little lighter than the other versions. The other versions I think are right around 5.2, I think. So yeah, this guy is definitely a beast, and heavier than most of what I would consider carryable for me before. But in saying that, now I really just didn't notice how heavy this guy is at all. Here's the hinder, so you get a 5.61, somewhere in between the two. It's still, almost an ounce lighter than this knife, and you can feel it. This knife definitely feels heavy. A lot of guys are gonna, relay that into like quality and feel like solid in your hand, and it does feel that way. The thing is balanced very well, although it's a little handle heavy, I would say. Yeah, probably right there. Definitely a little handle heavy, but that's okay. It's definitely not going to want to fall out of your hand. And in use, I didn't notice it feeling like it didn't have enough, blade momentum. But yeah, as far as this is concerned, I really did feel, it felt great. Like I said, the ergonomics, my hands are, 3 and 3¾ inches wide, 4 inches tall. I'll bring in it's been a while since I actually showed you guys this. So I'm right around 3¾ inches across, and then right around 4 inches tall, and then right around 6. If I'm going from this point to the tip of my fingers, it's right around 6¼ to 6½, depending on like where you go. And I think that gives you a good idea of how that knife's gonna fit in your hand, and it fits really well. So I really enjoyed carrying this knife, really enjoyed using it. This clip, guys, they took the point off the clip. This is more like his customs. Although this, like I was saying before, this clip used to have a much pointier tip and it had an ergonomic issue. They did fix that, and as you can see, it's much more round than the original ones that came out. This one's even more so. And as far as the way this clip feels in my hand, I have never, ever felt like there was a hot spot at all from this clip. It's just so comfortable, guys. And the fact that this handle is just a little bit wider, a little bit, it's just I think these are probably the same. Yeah. This one's just a little tiny bit broader. Actually, I think they're very similar. I think this one just might be a little bit longer. Yeah. Yeah, very, very similar. This one's just a slightly longer handle, and it actually feels even more comfortable just because of that. This one's long enough, but it is like right there. I feel like this one just feels even that much more like real estate on it. You can move anywhere on it, and it feels really good. So really enjoy the ergonomics on this knife, no matter where you are. Even up here, you could get up there if you wanted to. I never did. I'm like right here is fine. There is a little bit of space there, but it's really just like maybe a ½ an inch between you and the cutting surface. So nothing I really noticed. Overall, the jimping is a little aggressive, guys. Some guys are going to bitch about the jimping. I don't have a problem with it. It's kind of like broad, like wide out here. And these are slightly sharp for what it is, but nothing that's going to like, you guys aren't seeing like skin come off on it or anything. Right here, I could see how some guys might have an issue with it. Did not bother me I think this jimping is pretty well done for jimping. Although some guys will probably have an issue with this jimping. Didn't bother me. So I do love these thumb studs, guys. I think they look good. I think they function very well. They are larger, like I said, than these, but I don't mind these, though. I feel like these thumb studs were fine. I think they just wanted to fit the knife a little better, the larger knife. So I really don't mind it. I like the thumb studs. And I know some guys are going to say, oh, it's, you know, bigger thumb stud in the cutting path, but really no issue here, guys. And a lot of times what you're cutting away from the thumb stud. You know, sometimes you'll be going into it, but very rarely. And if you are, really not going to have an issue here. Very seldom do I even have an issue with that. So not something I think about, but this one is slightly smaller, but almost the same path as the other one. So really love this knife, guys, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. I really did enjoy using it. I do enjoy using it. The action's really fun, you know, just flies out, and I really just love this knife. So nicely done, Ramon. I really do like the way he kind of refined this one a little bit in this model. Also nicely done, Reate, kind of picking up, you know, where they left off with that knife and fixing a few things. I really did enjoy this. The weight, you know, it could be a little better, guys. They could mill these. If they milled the titanium here, it would make a much lighter knife. Do I think it's necessary? No. Would I like it? Yes. I think it would be nice to just mill these handles out a little bit. And then it would also maybe help with the balance a little. But like I said, that's, you know, a lot of guys don't mind balance on a pocket knife. I do, because if I'm handling stuff, I like a knife that's not gonna like fall out of my hands if I'm, you know, trying to handle other things and doing things. So I like when it's a little bit handle heavy or nice and balanced. So something I do think is something I think about a little bit, although it's not gonna make or break a knife for me necessarily. So anyways, I've already rambled on enough with this, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it brought some value compared to the like unboxing. I did really enjoy this knife. I think it was very well done. Taking it apart, putting it back together, super simple, super easy. Except for the backspacer, trying to line that up can be a little bit of a pain, but other than that, really smooth. So in more than one way. So yeah, really enjoyed it, guys. Hope you did enjoy this, and have a great day. I'll see you guys on the next one.